He hands me a big ring of keys and a 38 pistol. And he says, here you go. Gave me the addresses of about 3 or 4 buildings he built around town. And I had to go in there and assess the situation, what's vacant, what needs to be fixed up, what needs to get rented. And I did. And I was real good at it. And so I learned everything there was to know about Section 8 housing. I mean, because I learned from the housing inspectors. They're the ones that taught me. The housing authority taught me how to run because I do inspections with them. I learned the rules and filled out contracts and all that. So I got really good at it. And then we grew. And then he made me a bunch of promises, and he didn't really keep them at first. So I said, well, all right. I got married again. I had another kid. Excuse me. I got to get out of this. I'm living. And then the neighborhood turned bad, even worse.
Yeah.
What happened was I saved his ass. The building we lived in was predominantly rented to Navy people that worked at the Naval Hospital up the hill. Then the government shut down the Naval Hospital. Now he was subject to the neighborhood people. He didn't have that direct flow from tenants anymore, military. So he's sitting there with an empty building. He could have went bankrupt. But I took my ass down to the housing authority downtown. I made flyers up. I put people in my goddamn car. I drove them over to the building. I take their baby carriages. I put people in wheelchairs in my car. I had a station wagon. It was real cool. I could fold a wheelchair, put it in the back of the station wagon. I'd take people, and I'd do whatever I could to get that place rented up. And I did. So now it became a Section 8 building. But he made more money. It was a rough building to manage. And I lived there. I lived with it. So I created this really rough atmosphere, and I had to live in the middle of it. So after a while, I said, listen, I can't live here anymore. I got to move on. You told me we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and we ain't doing nothing. You're building big fancy mansions while I'm here in the hood. And I left him. And I went out and applied for a job. With all the experience I had from Section 8 housing, I was worth something in the market. Nobody wanted to do that kind of real estate. So I went to some big shot company that was building big buildings in San Francisco and had all kinds of affordable housing stuff. And I took a job with them. And I got to, got moved up the ladder with them because nobody, I had experience in the streets.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to just process the paperwork, with the government and all that. I knew how to deal with the tenants. I didn't care. I could deal with a bum on the street or I could deal with anybody. It didn't matter. And I could deal with drug dealers. I could deal with criminals. It just didn't matter. I had that type of growing up. I grew up in that shit.
Yeah. So
basically, I took a job at a company. The company was really good. They did a lot of big stuff. I learned a lot. Worked with HUD, worked with the state, worked with the cities. They promoted me and gave me more and more buildings to oversee. And but I realized I was only going to get to that one level with them. They weren't going to let me in ownership.
Right.
And the money's in the ownership. But if you can manage other people's shit, you can own your own shit. You just need the money to do it and the financing. So I saw that these good old boys, they weren't going to let me go any higher. So I was getting a little frustrated with that, stuck at about whatever. I started working there for about $30,000 a year. I think I was making $100 when I left. And that was a lot of money back then.
What year was this?
It's got to be early 90s, right?
Yeah, somewhere in the early, mid-90s.
It's really good. Yeah.
So here I am. I go, I did save some money, and I started buying little shit boxes in Oakland and fixing them up while I was working for them. So I was starting to buy my own stuff. I buy crack houses that were all boarded up. I buy all the shit on the courthouse steps nobody else wanted because they didn't have the balls to go in the neighborhood. I mean, there were places where people refused to own property because it was so dangerous. You ever heard of Black Panthers? The real ones. Mm-hmm. Back in the 60s, the movement and all that. This is like their deep ground headquarters. Unfortunately, they moved away from, helping the community and black people into a lot of drugs and stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it's very dangerous. So I started buying my own stuff. So what happened? The guy that I used to work for reached back out to me. He says, hey, I'm losing my shirt. Can you come back, take over my buildings again? I said, sure. I'm now a management company. My brother came down from New York. He got his broker's license because he was brilliant. And we opened up a little real estate office. Guess where we opened the office up? Across the street from the Housing Authority. We are now the Section 8 landlord's go-to place if you want anything to do with subsidized housing or if so we started doing management. So we said, fine, we'll take it on for management. He started paying us fee management. And then he started saying, hey, I got some money. You want to do some deals? I said, fine. But you put up the money. I'll find the deals. I'll fix them up. You put up all the money, and we'll be 50-50 partners. And we did it. And we started I started flipping deals. I had his money. The guy opened up banks. The guy had big bucks. But, so basically we grew. We ended up with maybe, I don't know, 500 apartments spread out everywhere, maybe more. We bought up, because I don't know if it's the right term to use, but I would pretty much blockbust something. I call it blockbusting. I mean, I would buy a building on one street and then turn around and fill it up with Section 8, and it would get kind of rough. And then everybody else in that street would want to sell to me. I go to the next guy and say, hey, and I tell him, my partner, he bought this building next door, and, it's going to get bad here. You better sell now before it gets worse. So we ended up buying a whole land block from everybody. And I did that in Stockton, California. I did in Oakland. So we bought up a lot of stuff. But then he got older, and then I knew I didn't want to stay in California too long. I met my present wife, and I didn't want to start a family in California because we lived on the top of a hill. I grew. I started at the bottom of the hill, and as I made more money, I moved to the middle of the hill, and then I got to the top, Skyline Boulevard. But you're looking down on the fucking hood. Who the hell wants to be the king of the hood? So I said, we got to get out of California. The lawsuits were killing me. They sue you for no reason out there, especially if you're a landlord. The politics, the crime, I hate it. I don't want to raise no more kids here. And by then, I'm already raising 2 kids by myself. So we both decided, let's go to Florida. I ended up in Florida after my whole tour of duty in California. I did a tour of duty in Germany. Well, first I did a tour of duty in New York growing up, or served time, call it what you like. Then I served time in California. And then from California, I went to Florida. And that's my life story. Now you know.
And did you continue working with this other guy? We
did some stuff together, but then I ended up buying him out because he got kind of old. And you don't want to work anymore. You don't want to get involved.
How were you able to buy him out? Did you get a loan against his portion, or how
By the time we got to Florida, I had enough money to either we always refinance. Every time we bought a building, we fixed it up, we refinanced, and we got all the money back. So now we're into the building for nothing. Or sometimes we'd take more than we got. We'd end up pulling out millions of dollars out of properties after we just bought it, fixed it up, and refinanced it, depending on how much, equity we built up in it by fixing it up. The management's a big key to that because, a lot of people don't manage their properties right. Okay, they spend too much money, they don't charge enough rent to the market, and that, the NOI determines what the value of the property is. So we build up the NOI, we refinance and make money on the deals. And borrowed money is tax-free money. Did you know that, California? You knew that?
Yes.
Oh, well, very good.
Jack's a homeowner.
He's a homeowner.
You bought a house
Yes.
a year ago, right? Has it been a year?
Congratulations.
It's been like a year and a half.
Year and a half.
Yeah.
So, you can borrow money all the time you want, put it in your pocket, and it's not going to be a taxable event until you sell a property. So there you go.
Yeah.
That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Then I bought him out, and that's my oldest son.
How much was it to buy him out?
Came to business with me. We owned like 2 buildings together, and whatever we determined the market value was his equity position, I just bought it from him and then bought him out, wrote him a check. I had money by the time I left California because I cashed out. Huh?
10 million, 5 million?
No, it wasn't that much.
Okay.
I think I owned him a couple of million on each building. We had like 3 buildings. Altogether, it was like a couple of $1 million. I took over all the debt.
Yeah.
That was the main thing. It was a lot of debt. All our properties have a lot of debt on them,
And then how did that expand through the 2000s real estate bust? Because that must have...
After I got rid of him, I bought up the shit of everything I could.
Yeah.
I mean, when I came to Florida, I bought up everything I could. And then it wasn't a mistake, but I did dib and dab in Texas, in the Houston area. Mm-hmm. Problem was, I bought in Houston, then Katrina hit. And when Katrina hit, everything from New Orleans and all that shit floated into Houston and fucked it all up. But I bought 1,000 apartments in Pasadena, Texas on one block once. 1,000 apartments all on one block, 100 unit buildings. I thought I was stealing it. I paid $17 a door. But there's a reason why. All money, all cheap prices, the reason why it's cheap. So I learned a lot when I was in Texas. But my oldest son was he drunk out of college. He wasn't college material. None of my boys were, except this one, hopefully. He came to work for me. And he already started working for me in Florida, managing apartments. So I sent him to Texas, and he bailed my ass out by living there and running everything. And, so that worked out. We did a lot of shit in Houston, too. and we got the hell out. But I did a lot of stuff in Florida, all up and down Florida. And back then, it was money to make because you could buy shit for 40 to 50 a door. You could raise the rents, you could fix the place up, you could trim your fat and expenses, and you can increase your NOI, and the place will be worth 70 or 80 a door. It's all about the numbers. So that's basically what we did, and we've done thousands of them. I can't even count. I mean, I have a resume. I stopped even adding on to it. So we did apartments our whole life. All right, and then we graduated from the low-income shit to B class. And then we never really did a high A class. That was always too expensive. It didn't make sense. Expensive was too much to run them. And then what happened was when I married my wife, I inherited her little sister and raised her like my daughter. She wanted to go to school for the hotel business. All the boys were in apartments. She wanted to try hotels. Fine. She got her master's in hotels. We took her and the professor, who was brilliant, our teacher at school. We stole them from school, and we bought a hotel. And then we bought another, and then we bought another. Now we had half a dozen hotels. And then this guy was so smart, we didn't care. We'd buy anything, Marriott's, Holiday Inns. He didn't care. He was brilliant. So we grew in the hotel business. But apartments dried up. We couldn't afford them. Everybody got in the apartment game. So now, here we are. We can't find no deals on apartments anymore. What are we going to do? We're selling our shit off at top dollar. We're making money. What are we going to 1031 into? And hotels are tricky because they're a business. They're not real estate.
Right.
It takes up a lot of your time. There's a lot of responsibilities, a lot of moving parts. So we started going into retail. So we started buying shopping centers up, preferably grocery anchor type. You know, so we started buying shopping centers, and then we bought up a shitload of them. We owned Publix's, Winn-Dixie's. Then I started also looking at, well, I want to slow down a little and get part of my, it's all about adjusting a portfolio. I'm sitting here with 25 assets I have to manage at all times. So here I am getting older. I don't want to blow up in the management side of it. I like the way it is. It's just my kids running it. Let me buy some retirement assets. So I started buying some Home Depot, some Lowe's, big name companies where you have nothing to do. It's triple net. You know what triple net is, right? Very good. Okay. There'll be a test later. So I started buying some triple nets, and I diversified my portfolio. We just sold out of our last apartment buildings not that long ago. We sold to Starwood for $91 million. He said, well, take everything.
Sure.
So he took all my...
Who bought it?
The guy Barry from Starwood Capital out of Miami. He's a big company, Starwood Capital. They sold Starwood to Marriott.
Wow. Okay.
So he does a lot of affordable housing. He took all our affordable housing away from us, and now we 1031 into some more big retail stuff. And I still got a little piece I got to buy. But so, I'm always doing the 1031. I'm always looking before the 1031, so I'll have it lined up. And a lot of times, if I find a really good deal and I don't want to miss it, I'll do a reverse 1031. You know what that is?
I don't know what it is. I don't. Is it
How
just
much
the opposite
marijuana
of
have you
a
smoked today?
What?
I'm just kidding.
I think it's probably the opposite of a 1031.
Okay, so basically, it's reverse 1031. You know what reverse 1031
I
is?
actually have never heard of it.
Okay, reverse 1031 will save your ass.
Yeah.
All right?
All right.
Basically, if you know you're going to sell something, all right, and you know you're going to have to replace it, and you have tremendous gains on there, and you don't want to pay it, you want to defer the tax. What you can do is you can go out and buy the replacement property before you sell. You have 6 months, it's still a 6-month rule. So instead of having 6 months to replace it, you got 6 months to sell your property because you already acquired the replacement property. Of course, you're going to have to come up with the money to do it. But if you know you're going to go sell something for $10 million, why wait till you sell it and just start looking? You're under the clock looking and clock's ticking. Don't. If you got the money, do it beforehand. Do a reverse 1031. Now, what happens when you sell your property? You get all the money because you already replaced it.
Right.
Reverse 1031.
Interesting.
That's what I've done many times. So I'm always looking for the next deal because whether or not my property is sold yet or not, I want to cover that 1031, and I don't want to be on the clock, ticking on me.
But this also assumes you have the cash on hand to be able to buy something.
You got to have the
else while
cash on
getting
hand
reimbursed,
to buy the
right?
replacement property before you sell your own property. But, you can finance it.
Yeah.